matter. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing.
Good morning, and welcome to Storytime. Thank you for joining me. Happy Thursday, wherever you're joining us from. Indeed, we're here for another amazing story. I am glad we're here together. Please get ready, get comfortable, because we have a beautiful story to read today. And this one is called The Oldest Student, How Mary Walker Learned to Read. And this one written by RITA, LORRAINE, HUBBARD, and MORA. Yes, indeed, illustrations by MORA. And of course, we're reading it with permission of SCHWARTZ and Wade, an imprint of Penguin Random House. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am glad you're here and hope you are ready to enjoy a wonderful story, a beautiful story, and indeed a heartwarming one. Thank you so much for joining in. Glad to be here together. Get ready for this one. The Oldest Student, How Mary Walker Learned to Read. And we'll be reading that one very, very shortly. Thank you so much for joining in. Please, as always, let us know where you're joining in from and who is joining in with you today. Absolutely love the opportunity to be here with you today. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully your day is going well, and of course, if it's just getting started like mine, hopefully it is off to a great start. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Storytime. Thank you so much. All right, let us see who is with us this morning, ready for our story. Thank you for being here, and I hope that you enjoy this one. The Oldest Student, coming to you very, very shortly. Thank you for being here, Amanda, Wes, Sarah, and Nathan in sunny Illinois. Thank you so much for joining us on Storytime. Welcome. Please get comfortable, get ready. We have a beautiful, beautiful story today. Amanda, Wes, Sarah, and Nathan, thank you for joining us out in sunny Illinois. Good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining in. Ali Amin, good morning to you. And of course, Jessica joining us from Washington. And you say, good morning, good morning. Well, thank you so much for being here. Good morning to you too. We are here to listen to the story. Absolutely. Yes, indeed. Here for the story, here for the community, and of course here to laugh together, learn together, and enjoy together. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you, Ali Amin, and of course Jessica for joining us from Washington today. Thank you for being here. Good morning to you. Welcome to Story Time. Good morning to you, Kate. How are you doing today? Thank you for joining in. Of course, Garrick, Theo, how are you? Out in cloudy and rainy Pittsburgh. Please do send us some of that rain out here in Oakland. We need it right now. Thank you so much for joining in. Oh, please do stay dry and of course do stay warm. Kate, Theo, and of course Garrick out in Pittsburgh. Thank you so much for joining in. Rainy and cloudy Pittsburgh. Thank you for being here. And say we're excited for the story on this dreary day. Well, hopefully this warms you up, brightens your day, and of course tries to push away those clouds. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Glad we're here together. Another amazing story awaits. Yes, The Oldest Student, How Mary Walker Learned to Read. This one by RITA, LORRAINE, HUBBARD, and of course MORA. Thank you so much for joining in. coming to you from Schwartz and Wade, an imprint of Penguin Random House. A big thank you to them for allowing us to have this book here on Storytime. Thank you so much for joining in. Glad we have this wonderful book to read together. Good morning to you, Marietta. How are you doing out in Harvard, sunny Harvard today? Thank you so much for joining in. And of course, good morning to you, Henry, as well. Hopefully your day is going well. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, thank you for being here. Hope everything is a-okay. Thank you for being here out in Harvard, Massachusetts. Marietta, and of course, Henry, thank you for being here on Storytime. Absolutely appreciate it. Oh my goodness, you say, Ali Amin, you're saying it's still dark out where you are. It is brighter here in Oakland. Not too much, but it is enough to be out to see. And yes, indeed, that light coming through. It is going to be a hot day out here in Oakland today. Maybe even long-held records of heat in February might be broken. Oh, I'm not looking forward to that though. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime, and hopefully the sunshine comes out very soon. The light comes up very soon for you, Ali Amin. Thank you so much for joining in. Betty, how are you doing today? And of course, Kikia, how are you today? Thank you so much for joining us from Oakland. Thank you so much for being here. Hopefully you are well. Please remember, Rikia, we have soccer, but also bring that water bottle. It will be very hot today, so please come prepared for that. Thank you so much for joining in. Glad you're here for another story together. Good morning to you. How are you doing out in Natchitoches, Louisiana? You say sunny, but soon to be warmer today. Well, thank you for joining in. Chilly, sunny, chilly, and of course, soon to be warm. Please enjoy that day, and hopefully you are prepared. Please hydrate, and of course do not forget your sunscreen as well if you do go out. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Absolutely appreciate it. Auntie Pam, Chad, how are you doing today? Where are you, Braylon? We miss you here on Storytime. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Glad you're here. Good morning to you, Pamela, Courtney, and of course Chad. Auntie Ann, Braylon, we miss you. Come back to Storytime. Thank you so much for joining in. Good morning to you, Miss Ingrid. How are you doing today? And they say good morning. It's really cold and windy out where you are, but always great weather for Storytime. Absolutely. Thank you so much for making the time. Glad you're here with us. Yes, indeed. Let us push away those clouds with our amazing story today. The oldest student, how Mary Walker learned to read. Let us follow along this journey in a little bit. Yes, RITA, LORRAINE, Hubbard, and of course, MORA, and coming to you from Schwartz and Wade, an imprint of Penguin Random House. A big thank you indeed. All right, we're going to get started with our story very shortly. Soraya, how are you doing today, sweetheart? Thank you so much for joining in Storytime right here in Oakland. And of course, Sharon Lungo, thank you so much for being here. Glad we're here together to enjoy more stories. Let's get started today. Oh yes, the story of Mary Walker. I hope you're ready to join me on the other side of this message, and we'll get to enjoy our story for today. Thank you so much for being here on Storytime.
My name is Maria Lofton. I'm the creator and author of the Kids Love Oakland book series, and you are watching Storytime with Mr. Lamata.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Yes, indeed. Do check out her Kids Love Oakland series. It is beautiful indeed. And here we go. The oldest student, how Mary Walker learned to read. Thank you for joining us. This one is written by RITA, LORRAINE, Hubbard, and of course illustrations by MORA. Yes, the award-winning MORA. And we're reading this one with permission of Schwartz and Wade, an imprint of Penguin Random House. A big thank you to them for allowing us to have this wonderful book right here on Storytime today. Welcome and get ready. Here we go. And of course, those are some real-life images of Mary Walker, and we can come back and look at those again in a little bit. Oh, the inspirational Mary Walker. All right, here we go. The oldest student, how Mary Walker learned to read. Written by RITA, LORRAINE, Hubbard, and illustrations by MORA. And we're reading this one with permission of Schwartz and Wade, an imprint of Penguin Random House. All right. Whenever young Mary Walker was tired, She would shield her eyes from the sun and watch the swallow-tailed kites dip and soar above the trees. That must be what it's like to be free, she thought. Yes, indeed. Whenever young Mary Walker was tired, she would shield her eyes from the sun and watch the swallow-tailed kites dip and soar above the trees. That must be what it's like to be free, she thought. But Mary didn't watch for long. Even at an early age, even at only 8 years old, she knew the first rule of Union Springs, Alabama plantation she lived on. Yeah. But Mary didn't watch for long. Even at only 8 years old, she knew the first rule of the Union Spring, Alabama plantation she lived on. She knew the second rule too. Slaves should not be taught to read or write or do anything that might help them to learn to do so. Mary didn't stop working. She didn't learn to read either. But at the end of each long day picking cotton, totting water to Papa and the other slaves who chopped wood for the train tracks, or helping Mama clean the big house, she would lie in her little bed next to the crumbling fireplace and think about those birds. When I am free, I will go where I want and rest when I want, and I will learn to read too. When she was 15, it happened. Mary and her mother, brothers, and sister were free. The Emancipation Proclamation said so. What it didn't say was how a family with nothing except the tattered garments on their backs could find food, clothes, and a place to sleep. Mary's father had died, and the family was on its own. Freedom Road! To Freedom Road! Across fields and through woods, ex-slaves surged like waves crashing hard to the shore. Now that they were free, every road was Freedom Road. Many headed north and west and every which way, searching for long-lost family members or simply experiencing the wonder of being free. Others, like Mary, chose to stay in the South. An organization called the Freedmen Bureau helped those who stayed to find shelter on abandoned Confederate land. Mary and her family settled in a one-room cabin, and for the next few years, she worked alongside her mama to help feed her siblings. 7 days a week, she churned batter, cleaned houses, and cared for other folks' children. The hours were long, and if Mary was thirsty or hungry or needed to use the outhouse, she had to wait until she got home. At week's end, she would offer Mama the one lonely quarter she had earned. One day, Mary met a group of evangelists on the roadside. A woman with soft wrinkles in her kindly face placed a big, beautiful Bible in Mary's hand and told her, "Your civil rights are in these pages." Mary didn't know what civil rights were. She only knew that top to bottom, front to back, that book was filled with words. "I am going to learn to read those words," she vowed, "but not today. Today, there was work to be done." And tomorrow, too, when Mary got married, she and her husband worked as sharecroppers, renting someone else's house, using someone else's tools, and planting someone else's seeds to farm land they would never own. After they harvested the crops, almost all the money they earned went to pay for the housing, tool, and seed costs. Mary was 20 years old when her first son was born. She opened the Bible and marveled at the squiggles inside. There had been no time to learn to read. A friend wrote Mary's son's birth date in the Bible, August 26, 1869. Then Mary dipped a pen into an inkwell and made her mark beside it. Not a letter, not a name, just a mark. It was the best she could do. One day, Mary's husband died. She married again, and a second son was born. Then a third. Mary made marks for those sons too. Now she had 3 growing boys. More money, that's what we need, Mary thought. But the only other jobs available to Black women were as maids or nannies or cooks. The hours were long, with only half a day off on Saturdays. And like sharecropping, they didn't pay much. Mary sighed. Words would have to wait. For the next 4 decades, Mary sharecropped and did odd jobs to help support her family. In 1917, Mary's family moved to the little city of Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was the year of Chattanooga's Great Flood. The story was in all the papers, but Mary could only study the pictures to understand what had happened. By now, Mary was 68 and too old to sharecrop, but she continued to work, cooking, cleaning, and babysitting. She also fried fish, baked cakes, and sold sandwiches to raise money for her church. On Sunday, she would sit in the congregation, and as the preacher spoke, she would clutch her family Bible, the Bible she still couldn't read. When Mary was well past 90, she and her husband sat in their creaky rockers while one or another of their sons read to them. After the 2 younger boys died, the eldest read. Then Mary's husband died. Several years later, her eldest son died. He was 94. Mary had outlived her entire family. She was 114 years old and alone. "Can't read," she said. "Can't write. I don't know anything." Mary stood at the window of the retirement home and gazed down at the world below. Words were everywhere, on billboards, on buildings, on store windows and trucks. She sighed. All this time, she thought, and they still look like squiggles. What could Mary do? Mary had heard about a new reading class held in her building. She pursed her lips. No more waiting, she decided. Time to learn. Out of her apartment, into an elevator, and down the lobby she went. When the elevator doors sprang open, Mary saw people sitting under a sign with a picture of an open book. She could not read the words. A neighbor walked up to her. "That's a reading class, Miss Mary. Can I help you over?" Mary shook her head. Then she gripped her cane, lifted her chin, and walked straight toward the sign. Oh, yes. Mary shook her head. Then she gripped her cane, lifted her chin, and walked straight toward the sign. For the next year and more, Mary put everything she had into learning to read. It wasn't easy. After all, she was the oldest student in the class and probably in the entire country. Could someone her age learn to read? She didn't know, but by God, she was going to try. She studied the alphabet until her eyes were watered. She memorized the sounds each letter made and practiced writing her name so many times that her fingers cramped. She learned to recognize sight words and then challenged herself to make short sentences with them. She studied and studied until books and pages and letters and words swirled in the head while she slept. Oh. Yes, she studied and studied until books and pages and letters and words swirled in her head while she slept. One fine day, Mary's hard work paid off. She could read. Word of her accomplishment traveled, and people everywhere celebrated with her. Chattanooga's mayor, newspaper journalists across the country, and a man from the U.S. Department of Education who said, "Mrs. Mary Walker, I pronounce you the nation's oldest student," all shared her joy. Oh. Mary felt complete. She still missed her sons, but whenever she was lonely, she read from the Bible or looked out her window and read the words in the street below. From then on, Chattanoogaans honored Mary's achievement with yearly birthday parties. In 1966, President Lyndon B. Johnson sent well wishes to Mary's 118th birthday. And in 1969, President Richard Nixon did the same. Mary was now 121 years old. Wow. Mary received many gifts over the years: a radio, a sofa, her very first television, a new Bible, the key to the city, and perfume and champagne from the Canadian Mounties. She also received something that brought back those long days in the Alabama cotton fields, her first airplane ride. From the cockpit window, Mary gazed at the trees and rooftops below. No different than a horse and a buggy ride, she joked, but she knew it was. As the plane dipped and soared like the swallow-tailed kites of long ago, Mary decided that flying was a lot like reading. They both made her body feel as free as a bird. Oh, what a description, right? As the plane dipped and soared like those swallow-tailed kites of long ago, Mary decided that flying was a lot like reading. They both made the body feel as free as a bird. Wonderful indeed. Each year, before her birthday celebration came to an end, someone would whisper, "Let's listen to Miss Mary." The shuffling and movement would fade away until not a sound was heard. Then Mary would stand on her old legs, clear her old throat, and read from her Bible or school book in a voice that was clear and strong. Then when she finished, she would gently close her eyes. She would gently close her book and say, "You're never too old to learn." Think about that. And in the author's note, it says, Mary Walker was born a slave on May 6, 1848. From a young age, she picked cotton, totted water, cleaned houses, and worked as a blacksmith. In her later life, she never forgot the harsh punishment slaves received if they stopped working without permission. But she was quick to say that she had forgiven everyone for the things they had endured. Very little is known about Mary's life from her emancipation at age 15 until she learned to read at 116. But it is a fact that her Bible waited 101 years for her to learn to read it. It is known that Mary was married twice and had 3 sons. One of those sons served in World War I. I chose to imagine other details to fill in the blanks. Mary's eldest son died in 1963. She enrolled in CALM, the Chattanooga area literacy movement, the same year. And by 1964, she knew how to read, write, add, and subtract. She was then certified as the nation's oldest student and was twice named Chattanooga's Ambassador of Goodwill. Her retirement home was renamed the Mary Walker Towers. Mary received the key to the city of Chattanooga in 1966 and 1969. Her first airplane ride happened on May 6, 1966, when pilot Harry Potter flew her over her apartment building so she could wave to her friends below. Before Mary's death at age 121 on December 1, 1969, she could still see and hear well. She could still hold a pencil and write her name steadily, and she could walk with only minimal help from her trusty cane. She could also still sew beautiful bonnets and bake cakes that she bragged were light as a feather. Mary lived through 26 presidents. Let that sink in. Mary lived through 26 presidents. Today's historical marker 2A73 stands at 3031 Wilcox Boulevard in Chattanooga, Tennessee, to commemorate her amazing life. Oh. Thank you so much for joining in today for that wonderful story indeed. The story of Mary Walker. Lots and lots there to digest from that book. So much will, so much determination. And of course, you can see so much pain in that life as well. But she carried on, she continued. And may our future, may our kids live to be free like birds and not be burdened by unnecessary laws, by unfair laws, by unjust laws, and unjust government. So let us please make sure that we're always looking out for our little ones, always looking out for each other. And yes, indeed, may all the kids enjoy the freedom to read, the freedom to express themselves, and indeed the freedom to live wherever we want. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. A powerful story indeed, and an inspiring story about learning to read, but also a life that was beautiful, a life that was determined, a life that was hampered in so many ways, but still persevered. Thank you so much for your life, Mary Walker. Appreciate it. And of course, RITA, LORRAINE, HUBBARD, and MORA for bringing this book to life, for bringing this story to life, for us to enjoy even more here, and of course, to learn from. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Absolutely appreciate the time that we got to spend together. The oldest student, how Mary Walker learned to read. Amazing story indeed. And may our futures be bright. And indeed, may we continue to lean on shoulders of people like Mary and of course push on in this life. Thank you so much for joining me in Storytime. Absolutely thankful for people like this, and absolutely thankful for stories like this as well. And of course, reminders of where we're coming from. But please let us be determined to make where we're going better. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Absolutely appreciate the time that we spent together. Absolutely loved it. And thank you for joining us today. Please don't forget to join me again tomorrow as we continue to celebrate Black History Month. And yes, amazing stories, Black joy, Black excellence, Black beauty, everything we're celebrating here on Storytime. Thank you so much for joining in. Tomorrow, join in. We have a family reunion with Ruby. Join in as we'll be reading Ruby's Reunion Day Dinner. This one by Angela Darton and of course Yesenia Sutherland. Thank you so much for joining in. I am excited for this story tomorrow. And of course, thank you for joining in today for a wonderful story indeed. Please let us know where you're joining in from, whether you're joining us live right now or joining us later. Thank you for leaving us all those messages. We appreciate you. And of course, we'll be sure to say hello to you next time. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Absolutely love it. Sharon Lungo and Soraya, thank you for joining us from right here in in Oakland. I hope you got to enjoy that wonderful story today. And of course, the inspiring story of Mary Walker. Thank you so much for joining us on Storytime. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Miss Ingrid, to say, yes, we're never too old. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing this beautiful story. Or thank you indeed to SCHWARTZ and Wade, an imprint of Penguin Random House, for allowing us to share this book right here on Storytime. And of course, RITA, LORRAINE, HUBBARD, and MORA for creating such an amazing book indeed. Thank you so much for joining in. Pamela Courtney, well put out there. You say there's strength, will, and determination in this American. Yes, indeed. So thankful, grateful for this book. So much information packed in just a few pages. Incredible. Yes, well said. And I think we're going to end right there. That is just amazing, Pamela Courtney. Thank you for putting that message for us together. I think expressing what we're all feeling right now. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Glad we were here together. I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day, a day of inspiration, a day of laughter, a day of joy, a day of enjoying great company. And of course, if you like to have some time to yourself as well, I hope you find that time to reconnect with your core, recenter, and of course, enjoy that time alone as well. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. This has been Storytime for today. Another amazing book here today. The Oldest Student. Yes, be inspired. Read and learn. Thank you so much. And all the little ones out there who cannot read yet, it is coming. Just keep practicing, keep looking at those books, read the pictures for now, as the saying goes. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. That book just leaves me so emotional. Such a journey that Mary Walker has led, or indeed led, and of course, wonderful lessons left for us today. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope that your hearts are glad, just as mine is. And of course, as we go into this day, let us reflect on what this life has had, what this life has been, and of course, what this life can be. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Absolutely appreciate every single minute that we spend here together. Thank you for being here. Please do not forget to join me for our story to end the week, Ruby's Reunion Day Dinner. This one by my good friend Angela Dalton, and of course, Justenia Sutherland. Please do join me for this one. It is a wonderful book as well. I will see you again tomorrow for more story time. Absolutely love the time that we spent together. Thank you for being here. To everybody that joined in, whether you're in Harvard, Massachusetts, in Seattle, wherever you're joining us from, we appreciate you. Whether you're in Natchitoches, Louisiana, thank you so much for being here on Storytime. If you're joining us from England, thank you for being here wherever you are. We're sending you love, and lots of hugs. And hopefully this day brings you laughter and joy. And of course, a lot of family time if you can. Please remember to check in on our loved ones. Absolutely. Thank you so much. If you're in Oakland, it's going to be a hot day today. Please carry that water bottle, reusable water bottle if you can. And of course, sunscreen, and protect yourself. Let us remember as well, if you're out in places where it is cold, please do what is necessary to be able to be okay, to stay safe. And of course, keep a thought to those that do not have as much as we do. And please, if we can, let us donate to places, let us donate to organizations that are doing amazing work in our communities. A big thank you from me, and I will see you again tomorrow for more story time, God willing. Hugs to each and every one of you. Have a lovely day. Much love. Bye-bye.
Big smile. You won't live lonely. Won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing. Read me all of your stories. Read me all of your stories. Some with people who look like me, others very different from the way that I look and think. Read me all of your stories. Read me all of your stories. Some stories from far away, others right here in my neighborhood. Read me all of your stories. Read me all of your stories. Some with people who look like me, others very different from the way that I look and think. Read me all of your stories. Read me all of your stories. Some stories from far away, others right here in my neighborhood. Story time. Ooh. Story time. Story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. He brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing. Brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be